I was halfway through a plate of lemon risotto when my phone buzzed. The breeze off the Gulf slipped through the open window, bringing with it the sound of clinking glassware and the soft murmur of nearby tables. Sarasota had been kind these past few months, warm mornings, quiet evenings, and the kind of stillness that lets the mind breathe. I hadn't come here to be interrupted. But peace doesn't mean much when a phone decides to ring. Crispin's name lit up on the screen. I hesitated. We didn't talk often anymore, and when I picked up, his voice was too casual, too smooth. "We're heading out of town tomorrow," he said, like it was nothing. "Just a little trip. Oh, and by the way, your beach house and your car already sold." My fork paused midair, not from shock, but from calculation. On the other end, he laughed. That smug, hollow kind of laugh people use when they think they've won. I set the fork down, folded my napkin slowly. "You forgot one thing," I said. There was a beat. He waited, trying to read the silence. I took a sip of now flat sparkling water and added evenly, "reality." Then I ended the call. The creme brulee I'd ordered his favorite once sat untouched. I slid on my gloves, stood, and gave the waiter a polite nod. No need to make a scene. I've learned that the sharpest response is rarely loud. It's exact. Outside, the wind caught the edge of my coat as I walked to my car. My fingers fumbled a bit with the buttons, but I hardly noticed. Crispin had crossed a line. And if he thought I'd let that stand, then he'd forgotten who taught him how to read the fine print. Back at the condo, I locked the door behind me and went straight to the study. Sunlight striped across old photo frames, catching the dust, but I didn't stop to look. My focus was on the cabinet at the bottom, the one with the fireproof drawer, the one only I could open. It gave a little resistance, then clicked free. Inside, the files were still perfectly aligned, each one labeled in Marcus's precise handwriting. I reached for the folder marked Gull Point Beach House. The paper felt heavier than I remembered. Tabs all clean. The ownership had never been in my name. That had been the point. Back in '98, we tucked it into a shell company. Quiet, layered, locked tight inside an old LLC. The trust held it. Not me, and certainly not Crispin. Still, I needed to be sure. I logged into the county's digital records. Clunky interface, familiar enough. The parcel ID pulled up right away, pending ownership change. My breath slowed as the form loaded. There it was, a signature, supposedly mine, almost convincing. But the loops were off, the slant was wrong. And I've been signing my name longer than Crispin's been alive. I placed the documents back carefully, then I opened a small black notebook, just 3 names inside. The first, Juan Del Grave. Marcus's old law partner, the one who built the guardrails. "I called," he answered by the 3rd ring. "It's begun," I said. "I need the clause." The next morning, I walked into a glass-walled real estate office under the name Lenora Vaughn. Buyer from Michigan. Beige pants, a soft scarf. Big sunglasses. Nothing about me said threat. A young agent with a shiny watch and too much confidence welcomed me. "I've got something special," he said. Gulf front. Not even listed yet. Basically done, just a family deal. Few signatures away. "Spoken for," I echoed lightly. "But no escrow?" He laughed. "Family trust. No need. It's all in the works." I smiled and slid a small silver USB across the table with a fake business card. "Have your legal team take a look. Just doing my homework." His grin slipped just enough. Outside, the air had shifted. Sharper now. My phone was already in hand. "It's happening," I told Yuan. "They're calling it pre-sold." "Then," he said calmly, "we trigger the clause. Later that day, my car vanished. At first, I thought maybe I'd forgotten something, parked it somewhere else. But no, I knew better." Mrs. Kepler, from across the hall, answered the door in her house slippers. "Oh, I saw it this morning," she said. "That woman, your daughter-in-law? She drove off around 9. I assumed you were with her." I wasn't surprised, just confirmed that was Moira, always walking the line between entitled and criminal. Back inside, I pulled the lease file. The car wasn't under my name either, another layer Marcus had set up. One of the old business trusts. I called the leasing company. Unauthorized driver, possibly crossing state lines. By that evening, the GPS pinged in Georgia. The car was impounded within hours. Moira had miscalculated. That night, a fax came through. Yuan's writing neat and certain. The clause. In the event of suspected fraud, the trustee may halt or reverse any transfer without notice. I stapled it to the beach house file. Then I reached for the burner phone. The one I hadn't touched since Marcus died. It was time to lock down everything they thought they could take. The next morning, I dug into the kind of digital paper trail most people overlook: old folders, archived emails, metadata buried in scanned documents. By noon, a courier from Yuan's office arrived, carrying a packet sealed with his usual precision. Inside were 3 separate listing agreements, all signed with my name, all forged. The signatures got bolder each time. Moira hadn't acted impulsively, she had a system. 2 of the agents were based in Tampa, 1 in Naples. None of them had questioned a thing. Then, deep in an email chain, I found the line that gave it all away. "Once the refi clears, we'll finalize the handoff. The trustee won't interfere." That was the plan. They weren't just trying to sell the house, not yet. They were planning to refinance, drain the trust dry, slip out the back before anyone noticed. I printed every file, clipped them into the Gullpoint folder, then picked up the phone. First Bank still remembered me. They'd handled much of Marcus's original structuring, and I knew exactly who to call Mr. Fallon. Steady voice, old school, too many favors owed to turn me down. He listened without interrupting, then leaned back in his chair and asked, "How fast do you want the freeze?" "Now," I said, "room by room, we locked everything, every trust, every lease, every account tied to the Trentham web." Then I asked for one more thing, the beneficiary assignment. Crispin's name was sitting on the second line. I drew a clean line through it. Underneath I wrote, "Leora Trentham." Fallon looked up, quiet but curious. "Do you want her notified?" "Not yet," I said. "She's still too close to them." I signed, initialed, and closed the folder. Back home, I filed the new documents into a binder labeled 2025 Contingency. Just as I slid it into place, I heard a soft knock at the door. It was Leora. She stood on the threshold, backpack in hand, face heavy with something she hadn't figured out how to say. "I didn't tell them I was coming," she said quietly, stepping out of her shoes. "Good," I answered. In the kitchen, I pulled flour and eggs from the cupboard, started mixing without a word. She sat at the counter, arms crossed. It had always been easy between us, even in silence, but today the silence held weight. After a while, she finally spoke. Dad's being weird. So has Moira. They've been whispering behind closed doors. Last night I heard him say, "She's out of the way now." I flipped the pancakes slowly. "Out of the way," I repeated. She nodded. I plated a stack, dusted them with sugar, and slid them in front of her. Then I reached for the folder I'd set aside. "I want you to look at this," I said, "but only if you're ready." She opened it carefully, like she expected something that might break. Inside were the revised trust documents, the listing attempts, the GPS report from the car, and at the very end her name, typed and signed. She looked up, her voice small. "This says I own the beach house." "Not yet," I said, "but one day, after you turn 25, your father tried to sell what never belonged to him. He was playing with paper. I gave you something real." She didn't cry, she didn't smile. She just stared at the page caught somewhere between awe and sorrow. I poured the tea. She took hers with honey, like I do. That night, she slept in the guest room, and I slept through the night. At dawn, the phone buzzed. Crispin's name flashed across the screen. Same number, different tone. By mid-morning, the knock came sharp, impatient, and impossible to ignore. I had already brewed coffee, as if some part of me knew they'd show up. When I opened the door, Crispin was standing there, jaw clenched, cheeks flushed with the kind of anger that expects obedience. Moira was beside him, arms crossed, oversized sunglasses doing nothing to hide the storm in her face. No greetings, no pleasantries. "What the hell did you do?" Crispin snapped, stepping forward like the house still belonged to him. "Fix it, now!" Moira's voice was cold, clipped. "We're not playing your games, Varelia. You're tearing the family apart." I didn't flinch. I just stepped back and opened the door wider. They stormed in like they owned the floor beneath them, too angry to notice how quiet I was, how prepared. As the door clicked shut, Crispin turned on me. "You've lost it. Seriously, you have no idea what you've done. You're blowing everything up." I walked over to the table and tapped the small red button on the side of the phone. It blinked softly, recording. My voice stayed steady. "I know exactly what I've done. You forged federal documents. You tried to strip a trust of its assets. And now you're here, raising your voice in my home." For a second, just one, something shifted behind his eyes. Moira stepped in quickly, trying to recover. "You're making this more dramatic than it needs to be. This can still be fixed." I turned, lifted a folder off the counter, and slid 2 sealed envelopes across the table. "These were filed yesterday. One for each of you. Read them. Yuan will be in touch." Crispin stared at the envelope, fingers tightening around it. Moira didn't reach for hers. She just looked at me like I'd become someone unfamiliar. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "Get out," I said. No shouting. No last words, just the soft thud of the front door as it closed behind them. I stood by the window and watched them cross the courtyard without speaking to each other. Only then did I pick up the burner phone and dial. "They'll try something else," I told Yuan. "Let's move quieter this time." By the end of the week, the listing disappeared. The so-called beach house? No longer for sale. The agent's number? Disconnected. Not surprising. People like that know how to vanish when the fire starts getting close. But Moira didn't disappear. Word from a contact in Naples said she stormed into a brokerage office a few days later, demanding to know where her wire transfer was. There hadn't been a wire. There never was going to be. I didn't gloat, not openly. The win came in quiet ways. With Yuan's help, I filed everything by the book. Fraud reports, notarized affidavits, timestamps, call logs. No spectacle. No court theatrics, just quiet, legal precision. We moved fast. Before they could catch their breath, every account tied to them was flagged. Some frozen, others pulled into escrow. Their business credit line suspended. Even their house, technically tied to an old cosign Marcus had made, was suddenly, legally, very exposed. On Thursday morning, I brewed tea while Leora sat quietly at the table beside me. She hadn't said much since Crispin and Moira came by. Silence hung around her like a shawl, but when she looked at me, something in her had shifted. There wasn't uncertainty in her eyes anymore. There was clarity. That evening, she opened her laptop and typed out an email to her father. She didn't rush. Just one line. She showed it to me before she hit send. I know what you did, and I know what Grandma did too. Then she closed the laptop. No explanation. She didn't need one. I'll be back at school by 10 tomorrow, she said. I nodded, walked her to the door, and kissed her on the cheek. After she left, I sat by the window, watching the shadows of palm trees stretch and bend across the courtyard. That's when the landline rang. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar calm, professional. May I speak with Mrs. Trentham regarding a pending complaint? The next morning, Detective Orrin Fisk knocked at the door. No patrol car. No uniform. Just a quiet knock and a leather folder tucked under one arm. He introduced himself gently. No tension, no posturing. I poured us both tea and waited for him to begin. We received some concerning documents, he said, setting down a small stack. A whistleblower at the county title office flagged a suspicious transfer. That led us to check 2 other filings, all tied to your beach property, all signed with your name. None actually filed by you. I nodded. I figured it would come to that, I said. He turned over the documents, 3 sets of signatures, all mine in appearance, but not my hand, not really. What surprises me, he said, is how quiet you kept it. Most folks would have gone straight to the press. I took a sip of tea. I didn't need attention, just a clean correction. He studied me for a moment and gave a small, thoughtful smile. The DA's office isn't ready to file charges yet. Paper trails take time. But they're not ruling it out. I looked down at my hands, folded neatly on the table. If it comes to that, I said, I have one request. I want the record sealed. At least for now. He raised an eyebrow. Your granddaughter? I nodded. She didn't forge anything. She didn't take anything. She didn't lie. I want to keep her out of it. He paused, then gave a slow nod. Understood. When he left, the house didn't feel tense. It felt still, settled. Crispin had made his move. I had made mine. Whatever happened next didn't need more police or lawyers. It just needed time. I turned off the kettle and sat back down at the dining table. The trust papers were still there. Leora's name, bold and clean, where his used to be. I circled a date on the calendar Marcus's anniversary and slid the folder back into its place. Later, I stepped barefoot out onto the balcony. The floorboards were cool under my feet. The sky was still dark at the edges, but the first light was on its way in. It always came back. From the other room, I could hear the soft clack of Leora's keyboard. She was working on an essay, something about ethics and inheritance. She hadn't told me much, but I knew she would. When she was ready, the house was quiet but not hollow. The echoes were gone, no slammed doors, no whispers at the dinner table. Just the waves outside and the turning of a page. Technically, the deed still had my name on it. But the trust held the real weight now, and Leora was its heir in everything but ink. She hadn't spoken to her father in over 8 months. That bridge was still ashes. Maybe it would stay that way. Crispin unraveled fast once the accounts dried up. The bankruptcy filing came within 3 months of the investigation. Moira left not long after, but circled back to sue him for financial and emotional damage. Poetic, in a cruel sort of way. No one apologized. No one reached out. Just silence. And I didn't carry anger anymore. What I carried was memory. And I'd learned that memory doesn't have to weigh you down if you hold it right. I brought my tea out to the little balcony table. The gulf stretched out wide and still. The sun was just starting to climb deep orange, melting into soft gold. I remembered his voice on the phone, clear as day. That smug laugh. Your beach house and your car? Already sold. But I'd smiled even then, because the truth was simple. You can't sell what never belonged to you. The house was still here. It had stood through storms and long summers, and it was still standing now. The car had come back to me, safe and untouched. The trust was locked. The scholarship fund was thriving, and Leora's future finally was hers. I leaned back, let the breeze touch my face, and closed my eyes. Not from relief, not from victory, just peace. Some people build their lives on sand, on assumption, on forged names, on things they think they're owed. I built mine on stone. And stone doesn't move.